Newsmakers, Hamas is evil, Whoopi Goldberg's confusion, and spiritual warfare. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each and every week to bring you interviews with your favorite pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, we're joined first by Jeff King, CEO of International Christian Concern. He's here to respond to the outrage that was sparked after The View host Whoopi Goldberg compared life in America to life under Iran's horrific dictatorship. Let's welcome him here to the show. Whoopi Goldberg is in the headlines for some comments she made last week about Iran and America, essentially comparing, it seemed, based on what she said on the air, life in America to life in Iran. I'm joined by Jeff King today. Jeff, before we roll a quick clip so people can see what was said, what was your reaction when you first saw this segment?
Oh, gosh, there were so many levels. The first one is a big head scratch. At the same time, I completely understand Whoopi and The View and what I'm watching. But let's just start with that. It's a complete head scratch, for the normal American. Let's say that.
Yeah, I think, and there are a lot of reasons for that. There are people who are watching or listening right now who are very aware of life in Iran. You're an expert on persecution. You deal with this all the time. You talk a lot about Christian persecution, so we could kind of start there, and we'll do that in a moment. I want to play the clip, but this is sort of the world you live in, so you understand when somebody makes a comparison between life in a country that routinely finds itself at the top of the worst possible places for Christians to live in the world and for women to live and for other minority groups to live, and compares that to America, that becomes, as you were saying, a head scratcher. But before we get into all that, let's just roll a quick clip from The View so people can see what it is precisely that we're talking about.
But let's just remember, too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Toronto.
I'm sorry.
No, I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
Not for everybody.
Okay, Jeff, so that is the context for which we are speaking about right now. Let's just start with the persecution issue in Iran. Help people understand what life is like for Christians who are living there in that Muslim theocracy.
Wow. So over 40 years, the Iranian regime, has tortured and assassinated Christians. And when, in the past, they were arresting the masses of Christians. And Billy, as you know, Christianity has grown so deep in Iran that actually they can't even arrest the masses anymore. But they're still arresting the leadership, the top influencers, arresting and then torturing. When I say torture, it's hard to imagine what this means for the average person. They go into Evin prison. It's a notorious place. It's known as the terror factory and the torture factory. So that gives you a little insight. But males and females are both raped. It's really satanic what they do, but absolutely have tried to crush Christians and Christianity. And all they've done really is built the Christian church in Iran over the decades.
You know, it is interesting, and we see this, I think, from a Christian perspective, understanding that you can't stop the gospel, right? So, you know, all of these regimes, not just in Iran, all over the world, they'll try to do this where they try to crack down on Christianity, and you watch it grow, and you see millions of people become believers. You know, the underground church in Iran is apparently massive. It's, of course, hard to do a census of the church for obvious reasons, but how big do we think it is? How large do we think that underground, and it has to be underground because of what you just described, church is in Iran?
You know, I don't have the latest stats on it, but it's known as probably the fastest growing church in the world, Billy. It's absolutely massive. And I'll tell you a little story. You know, in years past, we were involved in pulling pastors out of Iran. And you pull them into a neighboring country. You just let them breathe. You let them worship together, worship in freedom. Oh my gosh, I'll come to tears thinking about it. Really, really beautiful, beautiful experience. But one of those pastors, I was interviewing him, and I interviewed a bunch of them. And he said it was always amusing when the Western pastors came in and tried to teach evangelism to the Iranians. Because he said, look, here's, you know, they would have all their methods and everything in the U.S. way to do things. They said, that's not it at all. He says, here's how I do evangelism. I go to a party and I stand up and say, hey, I'm a Christian. And if you want to talk about Christianity or Jesus, I'm going to be back in the corner there. You come talk to me. He says, then I'm mobbed. I'm absolutely mobbed for 3-4 hours as long as I want. It'll go on and on. That's the level of interest in Christianity. And we see that with church growth. It's absolutely a massive movement. The mosques are generally empty except for the old. The church is growing like wildfire.
So coming back to life in Iran versus life in America, what was so interesting was Alyssa Farah Griffin, who's a co-host of Whoopi's On The View. She was trying to reason with Whoopi and say that, and here's an exact quote, the U.S. in 2025 is not as bad as Iran in 2025. She was explaining that there's no comparison between the two on a multitude of fronts: religious liberty, women, down the line. Talk a little bit about the general situation. We talked about persecution in Iran and differentiate it from the way that we live here in America.
Yeah, well, first of all, I may have to push back. You described her as a co-host. I think she's the token conservative. She's a straw man to be knocked down on the show because, like, let's be honest, like, you know, The View it's a political arm it's a communications arm of a political party, and it masquerades as television. So this is pure politics. It's really meant to, you know, inflame, divide, grab attention, and in the end, produce votes. So given all that, I'd say there's no comparison. Look, Tehran, the Iranian regime is the absolute enemy of freedom, of democracy. They are hated, widely hated in their own country because they're inept as managers. They're absolutely corrupt. They're evil. They're violent. They're violent towards their own people. So, and there, as you pointed out, look, there is no freedom. There's no comparison. And perhaps the most ironic or amusing thing is everything Whoopi stands for would get her at the least beaten or arrested, tortured, or murdered in Iran.
Yeah. Well, it would be great if The View actually balanced the conversation and helped people understand and had, you know, numerous people on who were able to do that on both sides in a way that was compelling and offered something of value in this political discourse. Jeff, as always, I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, Billy. Thank you.
For more information on Jeff and International Christian Concern and their work to help the persecuted church, you can go to persecution.org. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, Johnnie Moore, executive chairman of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, joins us to break down Hamas's latest evils and to describe his battle to help feed those struggling in Gaza. Let's welcome him here to Newsmakers. Johnnie, you have taken the helm of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and we're going to get into the work that you're doing there. One of the big claims that we've seen among many critics of Israel is that Israel is somehow the biggest barrier to getting aid to the people of Gaza. What do you say to those who would posit that that's the case?
Now, I think the biggest barrier to getting aid to Gaza is a corrupt old system that has enabled the continuation of this war, that's enabled Hamas to steal the aid, to sell it to the Gazan people, to hoard the aid for their own fighters, and in a type of like exhaustion, with this process, and nobody tries anything different. I mean, which is what we're trying to do, actually. So we're trying to take a different approach, an approach that says it was a false choice that some of the aid had to be used for nefarious purposes, that we can actually protect the aid, give it for free to people. And frankly, we haven't found Israel to be a barrier in that process at all. To our surprise, the biggest barrier to us has actually been the international system, the United Nations, the World Food Program, those types of organizations that have inexplicably chosen to boycott us, having never boycotted Hamas.
I was just going to say, it's interesting, having never boycotted Hamas, you often wonder, is the ideology the problem in some of these organizations? The refusal to place blame where blame should be, the refusal to say this was wrong, this was right. It seems like these international bodies, they either decline to do that, or at moments they side with the wrong party. And I don't want to lead the question too much, but do you think that actually then creates barriers with how things like aid are given out?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The way aid has been used in the Gaza Strip has only made a bad situation worse. And, the international aid community says they have to do it this way because they have to be impartial. But the exact opposite is happening. I mean, they're not being impartial at all. The way they're doing this is benefiting one party, and impartiality doesn't necessarily mean neutrality. Okay, you can see very clearly right and wrong, when something is working, when something isn't working. And our attempt at GHF is to take a system that everybody knows is broken. They all talked about it as broken. Nobody lied about it. Nobody said this wasn't happening. That all just, by the way, started in the last couple of weeks. They've all started saying this isn't happening. But we've all seen the videos. The aid trucks from the UN arrive in the Gaza Strip, and 2 minutes later, you have armed, Hamas terrorists or bandits like sitting on top of them, stealing the aid. I mean, this cannot be the way this happens. And yet the international community, they don't care. Well, what we're doing is we're saying you actually can do this differently. You can give aid on scale without being diverted, without prolonging a conflict. It can be free. Our aid boxes have more in the daily caloric count for a daily meal than the UN aid boxes. We could do it right, do it well, and do it successfully. And this should be celebrated by the world. For some reason, it isn't. But one of the reasons why it isn't, Billy, is there's a very, very concerted disinformation campaign originating with Hamas itself, trying to block what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you look at Hamas and you wonder, any organization or group or political party that is running an area or a country or a state, their goal should be the betterment of the people living under them. And again and again and again, we've seen reports of where things have been, you've had bomb shelters put under hospitals and schools. You've had these tunnels. You've had all this insanity that we've seen again and again. And I think for the normal person, especially a Western mind, they say, what in the world is going on? Why would an organization behave that way? And I know this is a broad, big question, but with all the experience you have there in the region and understanding Hamas, what in the world is it that drives them to behave in this way?
I mean, you kind of expect it of Hamas, right? I mean, this is a terrorist organization that doesn't dress as soldiers. They dress as civilians. They do everything that you said they were doing. What one doesn't expect is that the international community just goes along with this stuff. An international community that largely exists on the dole of the American taxpayer and the European taxpayer. So, it wasn't a surprise that they were hiding tunnels under hospitals, that they were stealing aid. Everybody knew this stuff was happening. No one was willing to do anything about it. And even, this disinformation campaign I was referencing, a moment ago, it exists for two purposes. Hamas wants to scare Gazans from coming to get food at our distribution sites. So they're constantly spreading lies about massacres and violence happening at our distribution sites and these sorts of things. They want to keep people from coming. And then, by the way, they're also threatening our local workers, even threatening their lives to try to keep them from helping us. That's goal number one. They want to scare the Gazans themselves from getting food. And yet the Gazans keep coming by the thousands to get food from us. So that's failing, thank God. But the second thing they want to do is they just want us to shut down. And so, with with a lot of help from a lot of the press, they keep defaming us and attacking us and accusing us of all kinds of insane false things. They just want us to shut down. But we're not going to shut down. Our mission is really, really simple. We just have to feed the people of Gaza.
How are you differentiating? How are you doing things differently than the international community is? Whatever you can share. I'm sure there are elements you don't want to share for specific reasons, but how are you taking a different approach that you have found, because I know you've delivered millions of meals, you have found to be successful?
Yeah, the first thing is like how we approach the problem from the very beginning. We started from the bottom up. You might say from first principles. Okay, we had a problem to solve. The aid was being diverted on scale the moment it entered into the Gaza Strip. So how do we make sure that this aid is not used? That's it. And then we designed from the ground up to manage that process. So we created secure distribution centers. And those secure distribution centers are staffed by a combination of American contractors and of local Gazans. Those American contractors provide a sense of security, in the places designed in order to make it feel secure. The main thing these American contractors are doing, I saw it, yesterday. There was a little kid who got a cut on his head when people are hungry. So there's a lot of crowding around the sites of people desperate to get something, which will calm down as we get more sites and as people get more food. This poor little kid got hit in the head. He's fine, thank God. But one of our security contractors is there providing basic first aid to the kid, making sure he's okay. So, and by the way, this is an incredibly experienced team. One of our key leaders spent 30 years in USAID. Another one spent a similar between 30 and 40 years in the U.S. Armed Forces. They've been to all the complex environments around the world. We just started from the ground up and said, these are the problems that need to be solved. How can we do it?
I mean, there's so much. We could go on for an hour because there's so many different elements here. But where can people go if they want to support, if they want to get more information, if they want to see what it is that you guys are doing day in and day out?
Well, first of all, transparency is super, super important to us. So every day we release how many meals we provided. If it was an issue, we say it publicly. If we're trying something new, we say it publicly. It's in a short daily report. I post them on X. There's a GHF updates X account. You can go to ghf.org. This was it's all rapidly being set up, so there'll be more information there over time. Most of all, though, Billy, I hope people will pray for us. But even more than pray for us, pray for the Gazan people, pray for Israel, pray for the entire region. What we're doing, it should not be so hard to do what we're doing. We just want to feed people.
Well, that is a noble mission, and an important and an essential mission, especially in light of what is happening there. Johnnie Moore, appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Tensions continue to rise between the UN and other international bodies, as well as their tension really with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. We'll continue to cover those issues as they unfold, and we'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are chatting with Pastor J.P. Pokluda, who's joining us to talk all about miracles, spiritual warfare, and revival. Let's welcome him here to Newsmakers. So you have been traveling around the country, talking about a lot of different topics. One of them has been spiritual warfare. What has it been like for you to open up in this way with the book and everything you've been talking about on the topic?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. I mean, if you want to open up attacks from the enemy, just write a book on spiritual warfare. But I would just say God's winning. As you said, we've been on 17 campuses now. I've seen over 20,000 college students pray to receive Christ in the past 24 months. And so I just think we're right in the middle of something really special. The most incredible time, at least in my generation.
Yeah,
or my lifetime, I'll say.
How has that shifted you? Because I think you, more than anyone this year, you and Jenny Allen and a few others, you have seen more young people accept Christ, as you were saying. What has that done for you and your faith?
Like the other day, I shared the gospel with a woman that was cutting my hair, and she started freaking out, and she was like, I prayed this morning. I said, God, if you're real, you're going to have to send someone to tell me that you're real. She was like, I prayed that this morning. And I've just stopped being surprised. Because I'm like, hey, God has done something to just burst open the hearts of the people right now. And I think that everyone is so receptive to the gospel. I was on the West Coast. My daughter and I were on the West Coast. we were sharing the gospel, and everyone we shared it with were just so thankful. There was so much gratitude. So it's just a different, the tide has shifted.
Yeah. Well, there's so many claims like the gifts are dead. There's this debate in the church about all of these issues. When you think about where you were theologically, where you are now, what kind of shifts have happened in you?
Yeah, well, I would say just from moving from Dallas to Waco, the reason I wrote Your Story as a Villain is because I kept saying, hey, there's a stronghold here. There's a stronghold. People were like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. I need to like hang out with my charismatic friends to learn what I'm talking about. And I'm reading the Bible, the same Bible that I've been teaching for 18 years, but I'm starting to see more of the supernatural in there. And I'm like, hey, this hadn't gone away, you know? And so as I see God save people, and as I see the Holy Spirit move, and likewise see the enemy attack, I'm just like, hey, we're still very much in the battle.
All right, so you and I have talked a lot about miracles in the past. What miracles have you seen, if any, while you've been out there on those campuses? Have you personally observed anything that's shocked you? I mean, even what you just shared about that woman, that's kind of a miracle that she was praying that prayer and then you were there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do baptisms. So we share the gospel, invite them forward, and then we do baptisms. And in the pond, I'm just hearing, you know, the different word, deliverance, freedom, you know, cutting, suicide ideation, healing from mental, you know, illness, physical ailments. I've heard physical healings in that water. And so not that the water's magical at all, but just that the Holy Spirit is supernatural. And so everywhere we've gone, we've seen some aspect of the supernatural working.
Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Always good to catch up with you.
You can grab JP's latest book, Your Story Has a Villain, identify spiritual warfare, and learn how to defeat the enemy wherever books are sold. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head on over to the CBN News YouTube channel. That's where you'll find the full interviews you saw on today's episode. We also want you to check out our new documentary. It's called Investigating the Supernatural Miracles. We traveled the entire country documenting some of the most incredible miracle claims. You can watch that at cbn.com/supernatural. As for this show, we'll see you again next week.